feast. And underneath that, you'll find an email if you want to contact me and talk to me. Please be civil. And I appreciate that. All right. Unleavened bread. This is the second part of the spring feast. Okay? Basically, it starts the day after Passover. This begins with that Sabbath where Jesus died on the Passover the day before, and then Jesus was in the grave on the 15th, or the first day of unleavened bread. Okay? So it continues our journey into the realm of the feast days. Unleavened bread, or UB for short, is connected again to Passover. In some places, they use Passover and unleavened bread interchangeably. They do that a lot in the New Testament. Okay? The New Testament certainly makes that distinction, and in fact, in the New Testament, it is almost as if a single day was removed. So let's take a look at the purpose behind this. Passover represents the day and night on which the angels passed over the houses with blood on their doorposts. This took place on the 14th day. On the 15th day in Moses' time was their departure day, or shall we say, night. After the death of all the firstborn of the land, Pharaoh ordered they leave the land finally. They were mostly ready. The text says that there were 600,000 men of age that went. We have found that the age of accountability in the Bible, Old Testament, was 20 and older. Okay? That means 19 or less were not accountable. And so they were not counted. So, if you would include women and children, then there must have been something close to 2 million or more who departed the land. And this, of course, assumes most were married and had children. Okay? Before they left, they took a great deal of gold, silver, jewels, food, and other things from the Egyptian people. This certainly took time after they came out in the morning. They then would have departed in the evening of the 15th day, and this day will shortly become their Sabbath day. It says they did so in the eyes of all the Egyptians. Some text says they left on the 15th day, but others say it was the night. I can assume from it that it was the evening of the 15th day. This time period represents their first 7 days as they walked into the wilderness. They had to learn to trust in their leader and to trust in God. This has always been difficult for them. They have grown used to being in bondage and slavery. There, although they were treated badly, they had a roof and food on their table most of the time. By going into the wilderness, they are now reliant fully on God, and He went with them day and night. It tells us that He was a pillar of light at night and a pillar of clouds in the day, in order to help them to follow and protect them from enemies. Okay? So we know that throughout this time period after they left Egypt, that they fell away from God several times. Unleavened bread is a 7-day event. The first day, 15th, is a high Sabbath day because it is also a weekly Sabbath. The last day is a Sabbath day, the 21st, being the last day of unleavened bread. The key to much of the understanding is going to be that the entire feast week is Sabbath. Every day is a Sabbath. Okay? This one is a little odd in that the 22nd is normally the weekly Sabbath, is stated elsewhere. Okay? So, not only are those 7 days from the 15th to the 21st Sabbath days, but also the 22nd is another weekly Sabbath, because the 21st ended, the 22nd ended that week. Okay, the 15th was the last day of the previous week, right? Because it was the Sabbath day. And then the 16th was the first day. That was the day Jesus rose from the dead. Okay. And it goes from there. Okay. So this becomes a difficult understanding as it's normal to have that many Sabbaths so close together. It would mean a Sabbath day on the 1st to the 8th day of this event. 15th through the 21st and the 22nd of the month. This is the one and only time we see this played out like this with the Sabbath days, except again in Feast of Tabernacles. Mirror image. Okay? They traveled from Ramses to Sukkot the first night. Sukkot is the name of another place where Jacob stopped and built a house and booths for his cattle after escaping from Laban. That story is another very similar to this. Sukkot means booths. This is interesting because we know that it connects to the Feast of Tabernacles, or booths, at the end of the year, which, again, is a 1-week, 7-day Sabbath. And that is what God told them that it would be about when he gave this law in remembrance of this time. Next they came to Etham, which means with them, their plowshare, which then brings them to Pi-Hahiroth, meaning place where sedge, a type of grass, grows in a marshy area. This was by Baal-Savon, or Typhon, which means Lord of the North, Destroyer, Baal of Winter. Here they pitched their tents or booths on Migdol, which means tower. Excuse me. This was next to the Red Sea. After being confronted by Pharaoh once again, they crossed through the Red Sea and into the wilderness of Etham. It was a 3-day journey from there to Marah, which means spring of bitter water. And then they moved on to Elim, which means palm, or strong pillar or doorposts. It contains 70 palm trees and 12 fountains of water. The word fountain here can also mean eye or mental qualities. I decided to only go to the 7 days. Their movements would otherwise continue. Exodus 12, 13, and Numbers 33. There is far more here than I could possibly get to here. What we do know is that there needs to be a connection in some way to Christ and again to the end of time. Sukkot, or Sukkoth, is definitely a connection to Sukkot, or Feast of Booths, which is the opposite feast in the 7th months, exactly 6 months apart from each other. Jesus referred to his body as a temple, or a type of tabernacle. He said that when it was torn down, he would build it back in 3 days. Jesus then went into the grave. He may have even met with Satan when we see a picture of the destroyer as a meaning here, along with the Baal of Winter. Interesting wording in the word winter. And finally, we see him coming to a mountain and crossing some water. We'll get in deeper with the breakdown of Passover all the way to Feast of Weeks, Pentecost, in a different talk. We will also break down the days of Jesus' death and resurrection in another separate one. So every story I see of an escape or rapture includes certain specific events. All of them have a 3-day event, and they all have the passing through water as they leave. What is interesting to me is that this crossing over the water happened on the 3rd day. Jesus was raised on the 3rd day. Moses crossed the sea on the 3rd day of Unleavened Bread. And there is a similar departure component in the escape of Jacob from Laban in Genesis 31. They all refer to 3 different departures for 3 different groups. Elijah represents the pre-tribulation bride, Moses represents the left-behind multitude, and Jesus brings up the end with the Jews. Jacob shows the whole story and shows the story of the Jews at the end. Okay? The Bible constantly shows stuff about eating unleavened or leavened bread. So what is the deal with that? What does it mean? In a real world meaning, it basically means that yeast was added to make the bread rise. When they departed, though, they didn't have time or the resources to allow for that, so they ate unleavened bread for that period of travel. This was ordered by God Himself. But what does it mean from a biblical perspective? Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are leavened, for even Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us. Therefore let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. 1 Corinthians 5, 7 through 8. Leaven, or unleavened, uncorrupted, okay? Especially Passover week, unleavened bread, okay? Unfermented, free from leaven or yeast, of the unleavened loaves used in the Paschal feast, that means Passover, of the Jews, metaphor free from faults, or the leaven of iniquity, sin. Okay? Ferment, as if boiling up leaven. Corruption, viewed in its tendency to infect others. Leaven is applied to that which, though small in quality, yet by its influence thoroughly pervades a thing, either in a good sense or as parable Matthew 13:33 in a bad sense, of a pernicious influence. A little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. So if He kept certain people and they sinned against God and He allowed this to continue among His people, He needed to remove them to keep it from spreading. So unleavened is to be uncorrupted by those around you. It's akin to sin. Then by reversal, we have those who are corrupted. A small number of bad can infect the whole. This is why God, as He brought them out of the land of Egypt, seemed so angry and killed quite a few when they started to steer the people in the wrong direction. If He had not removed those who caused the trouble early on, they would have corrupted the whole later. Unfortunately for them, it still happened over time. They would learn their lesson. He would punish them, and they would come back. Then they would follow for a while and fall away again in another generation. They never seem to learn their lesson. This same lesson is being played out, even in our own time within the churches. This too will play out throughout the tribulation period. Nothing is lost on God. His laws and His feasts were placed there for a reason. If we ignore them in our understanding of how things will play out, then there will be no true understanding. God is trying to turn people back to Him in this very evil world. What happened before will happen again. One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasten to this place where he arose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, See, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come. Ecclesiastes 1:4-11. Read, people. Study. Search. Pray. Keep watching. It's close. I know I keep saying that. We are close. Everything is here. It's time to awaken, folks. It's time to awaken. God bless everyone.